had some time to digest Splinter Twin and all the other Unban cards that have come into this metagame, and things are kind of starting to settle down. Once you go on the Goldfish page, you can look at the last 7 days and heck, even the last 14 days and start to get a good idea as to where things are kind of landing out. It seems that energy is still at the top, but I'm not back to my old complaining ways just yet. As you saw from the title and thumbnail, I want to take a look at Splinter Twin today. Take a look at the various iterations of Splinter Twin in Modern right now, and maybe look at some of the ways that you can prepare to answer them, because ultimately, let's be honest, they're at low numbers, but you still need to be ready for an old Modern menace that honestly hasn't really held up to Modern Horizon standards, but still has a way to win. When you're playing a mid-range strategy or a control deck with a random I win button, you always have to have an answer ready so that you're not caught with your pants hanging from you. But regardless, if you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comment section down below. Leave a like on the video and let me know if you want me to do the same with Mox Opal, Green Sun Zenith, and just other random cards in general. I'd love to take a deep dive, especially as a affinity lover myself. I would love to be slinging some Mox Opal on my end. But first and foremost, taking a look at the Modern metagame from the last 7 days, obviously a lot of Twin in the I mean, just edging out of top 10 here, right? So this is, kind of 7, 10, 11th place is kind of Splinter Twin out of the top 10 decks, and that's okay. We expected that. We've been saying that for years, and I think a lot of incorrect people, I even made a video myself, were saying that Splinter Twin probably isn't safe to be unbanned. But to be fair, in that video I was hopping off of what they said in weekly MTG, that it'll probably never be unbanned. That's kind of what I was hopping off of. And hey, even Wizards of the Coast is there to change their mind depending on certain pressures. And so that's what we're here to discuss. At 3.2%, this is it Splinter Twin? But there are 3 distinct versions that I would like to go over, and then like one as an offshoot. So the first version, we can kind of see pretty well if we look at a metagame search on Modern. We're seeing the Is It Splinter Twin version, and that is blue, black, mid-range control. You have Deceiver Exarch, maybe you have one more target, but really you're playing a control deck. Thundertrap trainers. Thundertrap can grab Flare of Denial, which is really great as a way to kind of build your own counterspell as well as a blocker. Snapcaster made to recur things, and Deceiver Exarch as your win condition. Now Magus of the Moon is great just as a one-of way to deal with a lot of the land decks, and so you do still have a fair amount of colorless Tron, and you do have some 4 or 5 color Omnath actually making its way back into the format. So Magus of the Moon is good, and honestly it heals my heart to see 4 lightning bolts in decks again. It's good to see this card actually still have value. Now Spell Snare, still really powerful in this metagame. I mean, if you're just countering this deck itself, it just hits Counterspell, it hits Expressive Iteration. Spell Snare, I've even said before the bans, was low-key like one of the best counterspells in Modern right now. So go check out that video. But this one's pretty simple. It's pretty similar to what I think a lot of people would think that Splinter Twin would land out as. I think historically people were talking about potentially being Jeskai with Teferi Time Raveler. Whether or not that's fast enough right now, whether or not Teferi is actually a relevant threat and its effect is actually important, is also a whole other discussion as well. But I would say pretty standard across these 75 here. We even have some meltdowns, we have some consigns, which we'll talk about in a second. But Is It Murktide is pretty standard. Next one, they're calling Teamer. It seems like they're really only splashing for Veil of Summer. I can't even go lower here, but yeah, it seems like we're really only splashing for, if we just kind of open these up, Veil of Summer out of the board. Yeah, maybe some Endurance. Oh, looks like we have some main board Tarmogoyfs here. Yeah, it seems to be Veil of Summer. So I don't think going the Tarmogoyf route is correct. And I think you can have more consistent pieces than playing Endurance out of the sideboard in a deck that barely plays any green creatures. I don't think this is a good list. You did play 7th, but I think that might have been off the back of Twin. Let's be honest here. This is for the splash of Veil of Summer to save and have that protection. That was one of the things that ends up being one of the ultimate weaknesses of Splinter Twin in Modern. You have to have that protection backup. A lot of times it's not just about flashing into Deceiver Exarch and then going in for a Splinter Twin win. Sometimes it is about having the this deck is playing Thundertrap Trainer to have the Flare of Denial available as a counter spell. You might even wait a whole turn to be able to cast that Veil of Summer. I'm thinking of something very similar like Pauper Tron, where a lot of times Pauper Tron isn't necessarily colorless. They are looking to achieve Tron by turn 4, turn 5. Once they have some color set up and they have some filtering going, then they can get to Tron and then cast some X spells and cast some bigger colored spells to start advancing their game plan. So a deck that doesn't necessarily look to win on turn 4 in this day and age with Modern, especially in a world of Force and Negation. So that is the Teamer Splinter Twin variant. The next one that I want to go over is the Grixis or the Rakdos mid-range version. And so this one is Grixis. You're able to play Deceiver Exarch, but you also get access to Fear of Missing Out. So when Fear of Missing Out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyards, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So this is a great way to, you know, kind of go infinite in that sense as well, like kind of infinite combats. But also, I don't know, like it just feels like Grixis mid-range with, like, again, a random I win button. I mean, this version isn't even playing for Splinter Twin. It's not going all in on it. You're playing Dragon's Rage Chandler, you're playing Nethergoyf, you're playing Fear. Heck, you're even playing Psychic Frog. Like, this just feels like, there might be a random I win. Heck, if I play Splinter Twin and get some value off of like a random Fear or heck, a random Dragon's Rage Chandler, I'm gonna do it because there's a lot of ways to feed out your graveyard here. I'm surprised this isn't a 4 expressive iteration deck, but I feel like if it was a 4 expressive iteration deck, you'd also be playing 4 Splinter Twin. You're playing 3 Mishra's Bauble, which is also kind of surprising. If you're trying to feed Delirium in the Nethergoyfs and stuff, then you probably want 4 of these. So I'm not sure where this deck is ultimately landing in terms of its values. There are a lot of like random 3-ofs. There's some concessions they're trying to make just to force the Splinter Twin in here. But the reason I bring in Rakdos is if you're not playing Grixis, you have a lot more room. You don't have to force Drown of the Lock Expressive. You're just going Thoughtseizes and you're trying to find red ways to re-enable the Splinter Twin, and you're just going off from there. Red also has plenty of good sideboard cards. Again, with the Meltdown, you have access to paying life for paying mana for Surgical Extraction. You just have good stuff coming out of the sideboard. So I think where, I mean, there's sideboarding in a Deceiver Exarch and a Splinter. What matchup would you sideboard this in? Just go main board and side them out. But regardless, Grixis or Rakdos Twin is another variation. It really just feels like the mid-range decks with an I win button, kind of similar to how you can think of the Painter Servant combo in Legacy, whereas that is a mid-range strategy that just has an I win button. It's a toolbox strategy with a combo finish. Now, the last version that I want to talk about is Boros Energy, or just like, these are the rogue decks. So these are the ones that like force in Splinter Twin because we can force in Splinter Twin. Now, what's nice about this was even Bamzing actually 5-0'd very soon after Splinter Twin came out in the Modern metagame, because with the One Ring gone and with certain other cards that were good against the One Ring, I mean, like you had Amp Raptor gone as well, you could just replace Amp Raptor with 4 copies of a card that went infinite with Splinter Twin. So in this case, Village Bellringer, when it enters, untap all creatures you control. And the fact that this card has flash and is able to get around Lightning Bolt, pretty relevant in this day and age. And without something like Revolt, able to get around the Fatal Push as well. And then Splinter Twin replaces the One Ring, goes pretty well with its curve. I mean, Village Bellringer, it's not Amped Raptor in terms of mana cost, but it has flash. So very easily you take the energy shell, or you take the shell of many other strategies that you have and just shift in the Splinter Twin package, and you just win from there. I mean, you're still playing, you know, Goblin Bombardment, Static Prison as interaction. You're still going wide with the Ajani's, Ocelot Prides, and God of Souls, but then randomly, if that's not working, you would usually work with the One Ring to then draw yourself out of the game, but now you just have the I win in the Splinter Twin. And again, this is the type of strategy where yes, you're playing Flage, but most of the time you're really only getting Flage Black like once in that game. This isn't a deck that can really efficiently feed into its graveyard. Unless your opponent is playing a ton of removal, you have to be thinking about that as well. If you're scared of the Flage, allowing them to return it even that second time could be really detrimental to you, understanding that this deck, again, can really only play this out once throughout the game, and that's got to be good enough for them. But now they have that I win button in some variations of Boros Energy, so it's kind of fun to see there. So those are the different versions of Splinter Twin that I'm personally seeing throughout the Modern metagame. I played against 2 versions of this, primarily the Izzet and the Boros Energy version. What other variations are you personally playing against in the Modern metagame? I'd be really interested to see if people are doing some crazy spicy things with the Splinter Twin. But In this next section, I want to go over some of the answers that we could naturally have in our sideboards that not only prepare us for Splinter Twin, but also have value in other matchups as well. So this is where we go over a little bit of sideboarding some answers. Let me zoom into my meme here. But to all my old heads out here, you might appreciate a little bit of Skyrim memeage from back in the day. But let's go over some sideboard cards that, again, have value in other matchups, but incidentally also have answers against Splinter Twin. Now, the first two are very obvious. Okay, let's just get past them really quick. First one, removal. Obviously, they cast Splinter Twin. You remove the creature. Great. Splinter Twin disappears. Easy enough. Next one is counter magic. I didn't want to specifically name Spell Pierce, but Force of Negation is a new addition to the modern format that Splinter Twin never had to deal with before. Now, the Splinter Twin decks are playing Force of Negation. They are playing a little bit of Flare of Denial, so they are aware of it now. But it is another reason why your opponent actually can be tapped out and pass the turn with Force of Negation up. So as a Splinter Twin player yourself, it's something you just have to be aware of. You have to play around now. We didn't have a force type spell before. Heck, even Force of Vigor is a thing that you potentially have to be aware of depending on the type of rogue green deck that you are playing. You have to be aware of the free spells that have come out of the original Modern Horizons 1 that really shifted the modern format. Next up, we have something like Thraben Charm that I really wanted to bring up because, first of all, this card's a powerhouse in Pauper, but you get to destroy target enchantment. So in response to the first activation of Twin, you can cast Thraben Charm. But this card's also really great because you're probably playing this in something like Energy, some type of go wide. So you're going to be able to kill bigger creatures. Think of like your Green Sun Zenith decks and stuff like that. And then exile any number of target players' graveyards. In a world of faithless looting, this is fantastic. So again, being able to stop Twin, being able to stop some bigger creatures, and also exiling graveyards, a lot of value. This even pulls double duty, specifically against those Grixis versions of Twin. If they don't have the Psychic Frog and they're not able to take advantage of their graveyard, then again, Thraben Charm is just an absolute powerhouse coming out of Modern Horizons 3, no less. Of course, it's going to be slapping hard in all formats that it is legal in. Next card is a classic one in Rakdos Charm. So your opponent goes infinite, they create all their creatures, and then you cast it for its third mode. Each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. So if they make an infinite amount of creatures, then you can go in. If you're expecting Rakdos Charm, obviously one of the many ways that you could play around this, if you're seeing that mana untapped as a Splinter Twin player, maybe you're at that position where you're probably playing lightning bolts and stuff. You've gotten your opponent low enough, maybe to a life total below yours, and then you're able to maybe only create a specific amount of copies to which you can have lethal on your opponent and not lose yourself on the kickback. So that is still a possibility. Obviously, you're playing against a Rakdos Charm deck, and so they are probably going to have some type of damage based interaction that they can hit you with, but you got to have, force them to have both. But this card is great. Destroy target artifact is very relevant in a Mox Opal world, and exile target player's graveyard is also very relevant in a faithless looting world. So this card is just like a slam dunk powerhouse, like instant speed sideboard card that is just really good in the Rakdos decks right now. Obviously, there are what many would consider better options, but if you needed something like this that's a bit of a catch-all, you're looking for that 15th card, the 14th and the 15th card. Rakdos Charm is that catch-all that is really powerful and does all of that. So again, having those options are really key. Next up is Consign to Memory, one that I think a lot of people aren't really cluing into at first glance. I think some of you have, but noting that Consign to Memory, obviously countering colorless spells, you got the Eldrazi, you got the affinity decks, maybe not necessarily all the Mox Opal decks, but the Mox Opal decks, generally speaking, do have triggers. So if you're not able to counter the Mox Opal, you're probably able to counter some type of trigger. So that's the value there. But speaking of trigger, remember that all Splinter Twin strategies are going to be putting Splinter Twin onto a creature that when it enters will untap a permanent or all permanents. And so that is a triggered ability entering the battlefield, aka Consign to Memory counters that. So that is the beauty in something like Consign to Memory. Not only is it that counter spell, that catch-all from Modern Horizons 3 that is absolutely insane. Of course, this is a $10 counter spell in Canadian anyway, and a $30 foil. This card counters the colorless text, but also counters Twin in a more unconventional manner. Now, of course, this doesn't get rid of Twin. If you untap and you don't have an answer and your opponent untaps again, and they can just go off now with mana as backup, they can maybe draw into more stuff and then go off again. you obviously need that one more turn to then go off and win yourself, but this gives you that turn. This gives you that mana, the ability to establish a board state, maybe spend more mana on a more valuable removal spell that you're looking for. Consign to Memory gives you that turn. Again, doesn't solve it, just delays, but surprisingly, Consign to Memory ends up still being a 3 to 4 of in all blue sideboards moving forward. Absolutely slam dunk of a card. I personally, in my mill decks, 3 to 4, I think like you have to be running 3 to 4 copies of this card. One of the last ones that I want to talk about, actually, I believe this might be the last one. If I just, yeah, this is the last one here. Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student. Now, folks, listen to me here. You flip Tamiyo in your Izzet deck, in your blue deck. You somehow flip Tamiyo. Until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -1/-0 until the end of turn. So even if a creature attacks Tamiyo or you know, either one, yeah, -1/-0. Folks, if we just kind of spin the block here a little bit, Deceiver Exarch is a 1/4. That means that if you flip Tamiyo, Tamiyo actually counters Splinter Twin. Now, of course, if you're going off with Fear of Missing Out, or if you're going off with, where is it? We've got to back up here. Village Bellringer is actually a 1/4 as well, but specifically Fear of Missing Out is a 2/3. So that one is going to get around the Tamiyo, but again, it's more against its more traditional targets. Something like Tamiyo is low key, like actually a main board, like just built-in way to deal with Splinter Twin, which is absolutely insane to me. I saw this the other day. Hopefully I can link the tweet that I saw this from, but absolute powerhouse of a card. Like, this card is insane. 1-drop planeswalkers. Thankfully, it's not doing the most busted thing in the world, but like now with Twin in this metagame, it just has even more value. You can ultimate to draw cards. Really what you're doing this for is probably the -3 to get like a little bit of value out of maybe some ramp if you're returning like a Veil of Summer or something green. But regardless, Tamiyo is just a powerhouse card, secretly being able to deal with Splinter Twin. And just honestly stop one of the best combo decks that of old Modern that now just isn't really able to keep up with the current iteration of Modern. Post Modern Horizons 3. I mean, you'll notice that Tamiyo, Modern Horizons card, Consign, Modern Horizons card, Rakdos Charm, you know, classic card. This card did a lot, does a lot. Thraben Charm, Modern Horizons card, Force Negation, Modern Horizons card, Fatal Push, a card that honestly functionally feels like a Modern Horizons card because this fundamentally shifted what it meant to be a removal spell in the modern constructed age of Magic. So I will give Fatal Push the valuable the honorable mention of having the power of a Modern Horizons card, if you really think about it. But that is where we're at with this video. I just wanted to take a quick look at the Splinter Twin archetype, look at where we're at, some of the various answers to it, and again, leave the floor open to you. Do you feel like Splinter Twin has made a good impact on Modern? Do you feel like it's made a bad impact? Do you feel like it was a good unban or a bad unban? What is it breaking? What isn't it doing? Me personally, I think it was a great unban. It was a fantastic unban. It's one that's been a long time coming. We've been able to prove with recent Modern Horizons set that the card's really just been power crept out of the format. Again, it's really powerful. It's gonna be there. You're gonna have to contend with Splinter Twin decks because people like their Scalding Tarns. You know, the meme always was that Splinter Twin got the Scalding Tarn players to always, you know, keep trying the next big Izzet deck, whether it be Izzet Control, Jeskai Tempo, Izzet Phoenix. Like, these Scalding Tarn players have evolved through time. They finally back to the home that they originally left, and it's just not where it used to be. So I think Splinter Twin was a great unban. I think it is a fantastic place to have it in Modern as an option. Modern is just so much different than it was before. I'm just kind of excited to see where it takes it. I don't think Splinter Twin's ever really going to be broken unless they print like a really weird version of it. I mean, even Fable of the Mirror Breaker, they printed a fixed Kiki, but to be fair, that card isn't really broken because of the fact that it can create, like, it's not about going infinite, right? They fixed it and actually made it really good in other ways because Fable is just an absolutely busted Magic card. So that's a whole tangent regardless. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I hope y'all had a great holidays when you're watching this video. I hope y'all are having fun with the Modern metagame. I personally am myself. And just, I'm excited to see where these bans land up even a month from now, going into a great format in 2025.